Tim Bontemps works for the mothership, and he covers the NBA, former Washington Post, New York Post writer. His most recent article, How the NBA Draft Sets Up a League-Altering Free Agency. Tim, thanks for joining us. I mentioned right after the draft, why don't we have the draft before, or free agency before the draft? How would that change things in the NBA?
Well, Dan, I think what you would see is a lot of these trades that we have going on now, like, for example, the Pelicans-Hawks trade, right? They trade Solomon Hill to clear an extra $13 million in cap space, along with, moving the number 4 pick. That sets them up to sign somebody to a max contract in free agency. Right now, we don't know who, right? Yeah. If they made that trade, before free agency, then they just go sign that guy, and then later they go to the draft and they draft somebody. So in one respect, we wouldn't have all these kids going up there and being drafted by the Lakers. Like DeAndre Hunter goes up there and gets drafted by the Lakers when that pick's been traded twice and is going to actually go to Atlanta, right? So some of that would go away. And also, you would have the ability for these teams, they would go out in free agency, they'd get their guys, and then they'd come to the draft and know what their team looks like. And then they could draft, based off of whatever the rest of their team is set up as, and that'd be the final thing in their summer. I don't really think this matters that much in the end because you'd still have some of the same issues that happen now. Like you'd have teams then drafting for need instead of drafting best player available and that kind of stuff. But it would definitely make the summer look a lot different if they did switch it around.
Go over the free agent schedule. What happens first here? Give me the dates, times.
So usually in the past, free agency started at midnight on July 1st. This year it's changed. It's now going to start at 6 p.m. on Sunday, June 30th, which the league did because it was insane to have everything start at midnight and have these meetings at 12 o'clock at night and have people doing stuff till 4 o'clock in the morning. So now it's going to start at 6 p.m. And then for the first 6 days of July, nothing is official, which is why we had the DeAndre Jordan back out and go back to the Clippers thing a few years ago. And it's called the league moratorium when the league does all its accounting. And then on July 6th, then all the stuff that's agreed to is officially, signed into action. So then all the guys sign their contracts and all the trades are executed and stuff. So that's why you'll see on July 6th, all the stuff will happen all at once. But that's kind of the basic breakdown of the way this will shake out next week.
What's the first domino here? What player?
It's kind of hard to know what the first domino is because there's so many teams that have a lot of cap space this year. But I think the most important one is Kawhi Leonard. Coming into the summer, I thought there were 3 guys who were head and shoulders above everybody else in terms of talent in the free agency class, which is Klay Thompson, Kevin Durant, and Kawhi Leonard. Unfortunately, 2 of them got injured for all of next season, basically, in the NBA Finals. So that leaves Kawhi Leonard as the one guy who can change teams and really make an impact. I think, to me, he's kind of the kingmaker of the summer and of next season because I think he's either going to stay in Toronto, which if he does, they're, at least, the co-favorites to get out of the East and potentially win another title, or he's going to go to the Clippers in the Western Conference. And if he goes there, with the amount of talent they have around him, I think they're arguably the favorites to get out of the West and go to the finals. And there really isn't another guy on the market now, especially with Kevin Durant and Klay Thompson hurt, that can change the landscape like that. So I think Kawhi's decision is the most important one because it's going to have a huge impact on, where the league looks going into next season and what teams are going to be favored to make it to the NBA Finals.
Do you think this is a question that the Lakers are mulling? D'Angelo Russell, Kyrie, or Kemba?
I'm not sure what the Lakers are mulling at this point. They could go in many directions. I mean, I'm sure they are thinking about that. Their situation is so fluid. They could either have about $23 million in cap space. They could have enough to sign a max player. We have to wait and see if they can maneuver things for that to work out. They then have to figure out how they're going to fill out their roster. Everybody is kind of talking about, well, this Lakers team is going to be a dream team. Well, yes, they have LeBron James and Anthony Davis, and that's a pretty damn good place to start. However, they basically have no one else on their roster. And to your point, they're either going to be able to sign one guy like that or a couple of moderate players like, say, Patrick Beverley and Danny Green. And then they basically have no money left. and they have to go fill in the rest of their team with essentially minimum salary guys. So, I would be curious to see if they did go sign one of those guys. I mean, look, if they sign Kyrie Irving, say, right?
Yeah.
They reunite him with LeBron James, have with Anthony Davis. That's a hell of a starting 3 guys to go with. But if you go back to, say, the first team that LeBron was on in Miami, that team had, Eric Dampier, Mike Bibby, Carlos Arroyo, Joel Anthony. I mean, they had a lot of guys that were not very good. They were playing a lot of minutes on that team. Now it's with a 26-year-old LeBron. I think asking a 35-year-old LeBron to play on a team that's that thin, the Lakers could be asking themselves for some trouble next season.
Kevin Durant's options are what? And what is his reality, do you think? How does this play out?
Well, to be honest, Dan, I don't think his reality is much different than what it was before he got hurt, other than that he's going to miss next year. And when I say that, I mean that I don't think his market is going to change. I think all the teams that were going to pay him or be willing to pay him are still going to pay him a max. I think the Warriors will still offer him a 5-year max. I still think, the Knicks and the other teams that we're interested in will still offer him a 4-year max. And, he's obviously going to miss next season, but I still think all the teams will take a chance on signing him. And frankly, I don't even think it will really change whatever his decision was going to be. Because again, he's made, I don't even know, probably $300 million when you factor in his shoe deal. I think he signed a $300 million shoe deal a few years ago with Nike.
Wow.
He's already signed, he's already signed a bunch of, $30, $40 million contracts, right? So I think he's going to choose wherever he decides he wants to go based off of the same calculus he was going to before. Because, again, he's going to miss next season, but then he'll play the next 3. And even if he's 85% of the guy he was before the injury, that's still better than just about everybody in the league. So I would think, if I was one of these teams, I would just sign him to the same deal I was going to and just get him for 3 years instead of 4. And I think that is how, most of these teams are looking at it. Obviously, you want to bring him in and look at him, but I still think that, given where the league is, if you get a chance to sign Kevin Durant, you take the chance and you sign him.
He's Tim Bontemps. He covers the NBA for ESPN, used to work at the Washington Post, New York Post. We have the NBA awards coming up tonight. Why are we giving out these awards now, Tim? I mean, come on. This is for the regular season, and it's just so after the fact, literally, figuratively. Ridiculous. I mean, it's silly.
Yeah, it's very silly. Basically, it was done because the NBA, when they signed their new massive TV deal with TNT and ESPN, TNT wanted another thing to broadcast, I think. So now they have this thing in June where they can have everybody go. And, I think the NFL does this, I think, the night before the Super Bowl, right?
Yeah.
The NFL awards that no one watches. I doubt anyone really pays attention to this because, again, it happens much later. I don't really get why we're doing this, especially they go through the postseason and they announce the all-defensive teams and the all-rookie teams and the all-NBA teams like they used to. But they don't announce the MVP and Defensive Player of the Year and Rookie of the Year and Sixth Man of the Year, and they do it now. And I don't know. I always liked it when they did it during the playoffs because, A, it was something for people to talk about, and B, it was always cool when they handed it out before a game at the playoffs. I thought it was a neat thing that they did. So to your point, now it's become kind of this afterthought, and it happens in late June. And, I would like to find a way, and it'd be nice if they could find a way to change this to where, say they did it right after the regular season and it was like the Friday before the playoffs starting on Monday or something. That would be, I think, a better way to do it. But to your point, at this point, no one's really paying attention. This will kind of happen and everyone will just kind of shrug.
Here's the other thing. I'm that get off my lawn guy today. I've been saying for years now, and maybe if the commissioner comes on the show, I can share it with him. We need to stop doing 2 guards, 2 forwards, and a center for the All-NBA because there's so much money at stake. Kemba Walker would not have qualified for a Supermax if you just said, everybody's positionless now, Tim. Why are we archaic in looking at the All-NBA teams, the 2 guards and 2 forwards? I always bring up Rudy Gobert. He's a nice player, but he's not one of the top 15 players in the league. And here he is, he's probably going to get a Supermax deal because he's on the first, second, third team, all NBA. Is there any uproar over this, or am I the only guy?
Well, for one thing, I think you could get Adam Silver on the show So you could probably get him on and ask him. I feel confident about that. But in all seriousness, there are people who agree with you and think that it's crazy that it's not just picking 15 guys. I personally am okay with the way it's set up now. The way I look at it, over the course of the NBA history, the All-NBA teams have always been set up with 2 guards, 2 forwards, and a center. And I personally kind of like that if you go across the span of the league. Like, to me, that's always the thing that, as somebody who votes on these awards, that's always the thing that I care the most about. Because I think when you look at the course of the history of the league, that's a good way. You can look back at, like, the 1968 season, and you can kind of see who the best players are. And I don't mind breaking it down by position. I mean, to your point about the Supermax, I do think that it is a problem that, say, Kemba Walker makes third-team All-NBA, now he qualifies for the Supermax. But I think that's more of a issue of that rule being not hastily constructed, but that rule has some flaws that could change. And I would rather change the flaws in the rule than change this. But look, if you told me that next year, right, we just voted on All-NBA and it was you pick 5 guys for first team, 5 guys for second team, and 5 guys for third team, I think that'd be fine. But for me, I like to go through it and see, all right, like this year there were, 5 forwards that were really good, right? There was Kevin Durant, Giannis, Kawhi Leonard, LeBron, and somebody else that I can't think of right now. And I like to go through and break down. Oh, and Paul George is the other one. It's fun for me to sit there and go, all right, who do I think were the 2 best forwards this year, and really sit down and break it down and figure out who it is. So I don't mind going through and doing it that way. I think it's a good way to delineate who is the best throughout the league. But again, I think your point is valid, and if it did change and get set up that way, I don't think it would be a bad thing either.
Final 30 seconds. Give me your hot free agent prediction that in 2 weeks will come true.
My hot free agent prediction.
Yeah.
I think Kawhi Leonard is going to stay in Toronto. He has the medical staff, the coaching staff, the front office have all earned his trust there. Obviously, the season went as well as it could have.
Are we talking 1-year deal, Tim, which I've been saying I think that seems like the option, or 1+1, or do you think he's going to sign a 5-year deal?
It's really hard to say. I mean, there has been some chatter about him signing a short-term deal and either re-signing there or leaving. I could see that going either way just based off what he decides to do. Because, again, we just saw Kevin Durant and Klay Thompson get hurt the last 2 games of the NBA Finals, right? Does that change the calculus for some of these guys who maybe thought about signing short-term? I'm not sure. We'll have to wait and find out.
Tim, thank you, and have fun over the next couple of weeks.
I will do my best. Thanks, guys.
That's Tim Bontemps, the NBA writer for ESPN.
For more Dan Patrick Show, tune into Audience Channel 239 on DirecTV. Stream for free on BR Live or download the Dan Patrick Show app.